Hi everyone, welcome back to the Potsmoker's Bible. My name is Zion. I'm the author of the Potsmoker's Bible, which contains the prophetic book of Zion, where I get my name and authority. It comes from the Ketuvim, or Old Testament, of the Hebrew Bible. I use the King James Version of the Christian Bible in order to put together the prophecy of Israel from the scattered bits and pieces of testimony from the various prophets of the Old Testament. And when I did so, I found a list of instructions how to bring God back to the planet Earth. And so, because I had the right qualifications to do so, I took it upon myself to fulfill prophecy. The very last thing that I am supposed to do in order to fulfill the prophecy of Israel is to publish peace, which is exactly what I'm doing here on social media. I've already published the entire contents of the Book of Zion and the Potsmoker's Bible on YouTube at Potsmoker's Bible. And so technically, I'm already done. However, in order to ensure my success, I have begun to republish on social media, namely Tumblr, Blogger, Facebook, and Twitter. So, all of these means have are available for you to check me out. Now, today I'm going to begin the 21st chapter of the Potsmoker's Bible, which contains the 18th chapter of the Book of Zion. It's called The Sighing of the Prisoners, and it goes like this. This chapter takes up the cause of the prisoners. It also speaks to the events of the 1960s through today. It predicts the transformation of the prohibition and the plight of the prisoners. It also speaks of the promise made by the God of Israel to the prisoners. The message is God, who is great, promised long ago to have mercy on those imprisoned unjustly. In the 1960s, the hippies of Zion emerged as a unique people. For the first time, the gray humans, the gray human traits were activated by the use of THC. It was clearly evident. We who got high understood that violence is not the answer to social problems. The first true generation of gray humans took to the streets to live a different lifestyle in keeping with the gray way. The 1970s also saw the transformation of the prohibition into the war. This action came at Kent State. It was the first battle waged against my people. My people were gunned down in the streets. President Nixon was the guilty party responsible for the deaths. This event set the stage for stiffer laws imprisoning more and more of my people. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan openly declared war on drugs, which was, in actuality, a declaration of war against the nation of Zion. Zion, the hippies, became a nation because the president of the sovereign nation of the United States of America declared war on every person who used drugs. And in so doing, he made void their inherent citizenship in the United States of America. In essence, if you chose to do drugs, you are no longer an American. You are of another sovereign nation that America has declared war against. The prohibition punished my people for existing. The war seeks to destroy us altogether. The war on drugs strips us of all that we have. It puts us in cages like animals. It takes our young and brainwashes them against us. And in so doing, they seek to deprive us of a future. But the gray will not let that happen. They have already set in motion the means for us to survive. That is this book. And I also am that motion. My bosses, the gray, who have trained me to be their voice, have sent me to fulfill their promise. I am the means they chose 3,000 years ago to keep their promise to Israel and to the people of Zion. I am the Zion of the Most High God of Israel. I come in the name of Zion. I use the testimony of the prophets to fulfill the prophecy as it was written. I bring to you nothing new, only that which was hidden in plain sight. I stand, speaking as a prophet, in the words of prophecy, the prophecy of Zion, the voice of the gray, the Most High God of Israel. The gray are the judges of humanity. They alone are over the earth. They come from above. They watch over us. They created us in their own image. Not the current image, but the ancient blue alien image. The gray have always intended to defend me and my people. We have been judged. We are guilty, but we can be taught better. But this society has lost its way, which is seen to be just, is in reality an unjust, unnecessary violation of all that is true and just. While the wealthy destroy our atmosphere, my people are bound in chains for wanting nothing more than to feel good. How can that be justified? I went to prison, not because I was a danger to society, but because I stood up to the state of Nebraska and testified that I purposely ran a holy temple that provided sacrament to the priests of Zion. I sold marijuana to teach my friends the duties of our calling. The Temple of Zion was raided by the police, a sacred, holy place. I violated the laws of the war on drugs and let the state imprison me for it. And I did it to fulfill prophecy. I operated the temple for 7 years. I operated it with the intent that I would defy the law openly until they busted me, knowing that I would go to prison. Why? So that I could testify in a court of law, using the testimony of the prophet Isaiah, that marijuana users were innocent, and that America was an oppressive, hypocritical nation responsible for the fall of humanity. And I did it without using money. That is what the prophecy required. It was during my prison term that I set the prophecy into its present form. Now that I have done my time, as was foretold of me, my next step is to the prophetic text is to publish the book, which I am writing. Of course, by the time you read this, I will have already done that. Prison was a requirement of the prophecy along with the prophecy itself. By publishing this book, I will have put the prophecy on an unstoppable course. It will take on a life of its own. At that point, I will be literally living out the events foretold of me by the prophets of Israel. I have already fulfilled all requirements set for me by the gray of the ancient Israel prior to the publication of the prophecy of Zion as written by the prophets of Israel. My job then, along with that of my chosen husband, will be to defend the people of Zion. This book was always intended to shock and awe society. It will, by its content, cause a controversy of biblical proportions. And is exactly what the prophets predict. The book proposes that marijuana smokers are priests of gray aliens, that I claim are the living clones of the very ancient aliens that once championed the cause of the children of Abraham, their friend. I also claim to be a new Moses who will gather my people together on a great big camping trip to offer ourselves to the gray as priests and as their gray friends of earth. I also say in this book that Jesus Christ is a false god, an idol. He won't be coming back because he was never a real person. Jesus, the son of Joseph and Mary, was a real Israelite. It was never about a man who dies as a sacrifice for sin. And besides, I'm already doing what he said he was going to do. Jesus was an Essene. He was sacrificed, a very common practice, for treason, because he was trying to start an uprising against Rome. 40 years later, another attempt was made and failed. So I say, Jesus wasn't Christ. He's not coming back. You may ask how I know this. It's because it's already too late for Jesus. He won't show up because I'm already here. The true prophecy of Israel is about a female who stands up for her people in the same way Moses stood up to Egypt. I am Zion because I have already stood up to defend my people. On May 25th, 2015, I became Zion, in fact, because on that date I stood before the state of Nebraska, and using the testimony of Isaiah, I established myself as the defender of all who use drugs in accordance with the prophetic instructions of the Great, who are the living God of Israel. I am Zion. That is a fact, by my own deeds. And this was God's plan all along. That someone like me would find their way to the gray through the use of marijuana, and that she would go through decades of emotional trauma beforehand. She would be unable to bear children because of her use by the gray to reproduce a hybrid through her, i.e. Rhiannon, my daughter, of the gray. She would pray to the God of Israel. She would give herself to God to save him, to serve him, and that she would recognize the truth of prophecy. That knowledge would be her guide to prophetic fulfillment. And guess what? If you're reading this or listening to this, then how can you refute this? The prophecy says, defend drug users. So I defend my people. The prophecy says, write the book, get it published. Well, I'm writing the book now, and I'm already seeking a means to publish it. So, may the gray wash over you, guide you, protect you, and keep you from all harm. May they teach you right from wrong, and may you be worthy of them. May your thoughts, words, and deeds reflect truth, good, and light, the unicorn way. Find your joy and make that your guild. Stay happy and high if you use drugs. You have every right and reason to. Believe me, I know. I wrote the books. I'm going to say later now, because you know I love you way too much to ever say goodbye.